For the last 6 weeks we've been looking at the Industrial Revolution, and now we're about to go on our last lesson. We had our first look at the introductory to Making a Nation, so Australian history, and then we'll be going on with World War One. Okay, so last lesson we looked at the world in 1750 and how it was a period of colonial expansion, so European powers battling to colonise different parts of the world. We looked at Captain Cook's first expedition and first fleet that arrived in 1788 and the 11 ships that arrived at Botany Bay, which is now known as, does anyone know?
Sydney.
Sydney, good. Yeah, so they were at sea for 8 months. There were 1,300 people on board, and 3/4 of the ship were convicts and 1/4 were soldiers. And then we also looked at archaeological evidence of Aboriginal existence, and we worked out that they've been around for thousands and thousands of years. We looked at an Aboriginal map at that time, and there were 250 tribes, each with their own language, laws and territorial boundaries. Today's lesson we're going to look at the effects of contact between settlers and Aborigines, and we're going to do this through looking at different perspectives. So is anyone able to tell me what is a perspective?
How you look at something?
Good, good. So a point of view? Good. Another question, what do we need to take into consideration when we look at different perspectives? Okay.
How some things might make different people feel different ways.
Good, good, good. And what sort of, do you think that someone who is 60 years of age is going to have a different perspective to someone of a different age? Yeah, so we've got age. What are some other factors that... Alice?
Religion.
Religion, good. Religion's another one. Okay.
Gender.
Gender. And when we think about Australian history, what's another important one?
Aboriginal culture is very different to British culture.
Good, culture, very important. Good. Which perspectives do we need to consider when looking at Australian history? So which people do we need to consider? So which people were in Australia at this time? Yes,
Aboriginals.
Aboriginals, definitely. Jenny, yeah?
Convicts.
Convicts, good. This is another one. Okay.
Soldiers.
Soldiers, good.
Regular settlers.
Regular settlers, very good. Through looking at a few different perspectives, we'll be able to gain an understanding of contact between Aborigines and settlers. So here we have Charles Darwin's reactions to Aboriginality in 1836.
They were all partly clothed and could speak a little English. Their countenances were good-humoured and pleasant, and they appeared far from being such utterly degraded beings as they have usually been represented. In their own arts they are admirable. A cap being fixed at 30 yards distance, they transfixed it with a spear, delivered by a throwing stick with the rapidity of an arrow from the bow of a practised archer. In tracking animals or men, they show more wonderful sagacity, and I heard of several of their remarks which manifested considerable acuteness. This will not, however, cultivate the ground, or build houses and remain stationary, or even take the trouble of tending a flock of sheep when given to them. On the whole, they appear to me to stand some few degrees higher in the scale of civilization than the Fuegians.
Whose perspective is this?
Charles Darwin.
Charles Darwin, good. And what is his perspective? Or what are some things that you get from this? How does he feel towards Aborigines?
Well, he's from Europe and he thinks that he's above Aborigines and they are a much lower race.
Good. Do you think that this was a common thought at this time? When was this written?
It was written in 1836. It sounds like he is giving a more flattering description of them than a lot of other people did, but it's still quite patronising.
Definitely. And why does he say that their race is lower or their civilization is less important? What were the reasons?
They've got they can't cultivate the ground or build houses, so it's like he's acknowledged that they're kind of good at what they do, but they will never fit in with like the European lifestyle because they can't look after sheep or have a house.
Yeah. Good. So it's this difference in values, even different beliefs. Here we have another extract. So this is Broome, and he explores cultural resistance amidst destruction.
In general, the Aborigines felt superior to the early settlers who were often helpless in the bush without Aboriginal aid. All the explorers relied heavily on Aboriginal guides or friendly Aborigines along the journey. The Aborigines were quick to point out the inadequacies of the Europeans. Reverend Threlkard's bumbling efforts to learn the Awakabal language were corrected endlessly by his Aboriginal teachers, who often rebuked him with, "What for you so stupid, you very stupid fellow?" The Bangarang used to tease their friend Kerr because he could not make a gun, a tomahawk, or sugar, tea and flour. They could produce everything they used in their own society except for a few special items that were traded. This belief in the superiority of their own culture explains why the Aborigines refused to lose their dignity and why they were quick to express their contempt for what they saw as European stupidities.
So in comparison to the last, to Charles Darwin, how from his perspective, he felt that Aborigines were of less importance. What does this tell us about the perspective, this particular perspective?
Because they think very highly of them and their culture.
What can we take from looking at different perspectives? We have on one hand, Aboriginals think a certain way, and on the other hand we have the white settlers. We have a clash in cultures and a clash in understanding. And so what can perspectives give us?
It gives us some insight into the things that went wrong during that time.
Definitely. It gives us insight, into events and what feelings there were at that time, how people were treated. In summary, perspectives help us to facilitate our understanding of the past, encourage us to engage with a variety of different viewpoints, and ask us questions like what life might have been like.